Welcome to Speaking of Faith with Bishop DeDe Duncan Proby of the Episcopal Diocese of Central New York. Thanks for joining us.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast Speaking of Faith. I am Bishop DeDe Duncan Proby. I'm the Episcopal Bishop of Central New York. That's Canada to Pennsylvania, Utica to Elmira in New York, and I have the great privilege of being joined today by Iyad Qumri. Iyad is the owner, president, he's all things with Qumri Pilgrimages. He and his sons Rami and Sami. It's just a delight to do a pilgrimage with them. He was leading the pilgrimage I just did in January, and I'm delighted to have you on the podcast, Iyad, because I think for a lot of our listeners, the idea of going on pilgrimages may be either new to them or something they've heard people do, but may not have considered that it might have meaning for them. And in this season, when so much is happening in our world that can be overwhelming, when we're seeing what's happening in Minnesota and all throughout the cities with the partisan divide in politics, it can feel overwhelming, like one more thing might be too much. But I want to encourage you, listeners, to, as we're talking about and speaking about our faith, to speak about how we recenter ourselves, how we renew our faith. And so, Iyad, having you here today is just a blessing. And I want to get right into with leading pilgrimages. What kind of led you to see this as an occupation you wanted to do? What was it that really drew you to wanting to lead pilgrimages?
First of all, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you, Bishop DeDe, and it's nice to meet you too, Adam. Just to, if you don't mind, I would love just to say a word about myself.
Yes.
That I'm an Arab and I'm a Palestinian and I'm Christian. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, as you already know, married with two boys. We're blessed to send both boys to the United States of America to study. One of them studied as a graphic designer in North Carolina at Brevard College. And the other son is the youngest. His name is Rami. He studied in New Orleans, University of UNO, as an accountant. And today they're both working with us in the company. So it's a family business. And we are Episcopalians, and we only do pilgrimages to the Holy Land. I started the business almost 30 years ago, or I've been a guide for 30 years. But for the last 16 to 18 years, I've been guiding only Episcopalians. And it's a huge blessing to get all these people coming from the United States of America, because we only deal with Episcopalians from the United States. And what I love about the Episcopal Church is such a small church that everything is connected. So with the word of mouth, thank God, things have been so blessed, and everything is connected with bishops and clergy, and many people were coming. And for me, I feel there's a ministry behind that. And that ministry is when people come and it changes their lives. I see it and I feel it. It's not a tour, we stay at St. George's Guest House when people come. What keeps me motivated, what keeps me going, it's seeing how people change their lives when they come and join a pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm. And I can say firsthand, you're very pastoral. For those who may not be in the Christians or in churches, there's a lot of tender care of the people who come and attention to people caring for their anxiety or their tensions, because going on pilgrimage is multifaceted. And so I really appreciate your care of people. And you mentioned that you're Arab and you're Palestinian and you're a Christian. For some of our listeners, they may not realize that there are Arab Palestinians who are Christians. Can you say a little bit more about just about that reality in our world?
Yeah. As Christians living in the Holy Land, unfortunately, the numbers are dwindling down.
Mm-hmm.
And many are leaving, and many think it's Islamic persecution, which is totally wrong. I'm not a political person. I don't want to be talking politics on this podcast, but I have to explain a little bit about it. So just to give you an idea, it all started in Bethlehem. And, since I was born in Jerusalem, raised in Jerusalem, and Bethlehem is only 7 miles away. So it's very, very close. To give you an idea, Bethlehem, which is only 7 miles away from Jerusalem, Today, it's less than 17%. But imagine in 1920, it used to be 90%. Then when Israel was founded in 1948, it dropped down to 60%. Then in 1967 to 30%, and that's when the Six-Day War started. And that's when the Arab countries lost, the Egyptians lost what's called the Sinai Peninsula, and the Syrians lost the Golan Heights, and Jordan lost what's called the West Bank. And so, unfortunately, with two intifadas, intifada means uprising. The first one was in 1987, ended in 1993 with the signing of the Oslo Agreement. More and more Christians left. And then another intifada took place when Sharon visited what's called Al-Aqsa Mosque, sometimes referred to the Temple Mount, in 1990, September 1990. That's when many people are still leaving. So can imagine today, Bethlehem, where it all began, it's only 17%. So we as Arabs and as Palestinians and as Christians, that's the shock when many people come to visit our country. That Arab is a Muslim, it's totally wrong. The largest Muslim country in the world is Indonesia. And when you think of Indonesians, they're not Arabs. Arabs, because we speak Arabic, that's our mother tongue back home. And then you say it's a Palestinian because this is the land of Palestine. Everybody who lived in this country before 1948, it was called Palestine. So the shocking news when I explained to people that before 1948, there were Palestinian Jews living in Palestine. It sounds crazy now, but Palestinians, because that was the land of Palestine. And so today we have three religions. We have Christians and Jews and Muslims. But we as Christians, we are a minority, no matter where you live. If you're living in the West Bank, future Palestine, we are a minority. If you are in Israel proper, that means from 1948 to 67, we are still a minority. So when you talk about 2% living in Israel as Christians, so we're talking about 170,000. Imagine in all of Jerusalem today, there's only like 4,600 Christians, 4,600. That's shocking, where Christianity started. It's so dangerous. And that's why when people come on a pilgrimage, they learn so much about these things, especially when they meet my bishop, the Archbishop of the Diocese of Jerusalem, Bishop Hussam Naum. And he talks about the challenges and that we face as people living in the Holy Land, and especially for church leaders like bishops or clergy people that lead the community. It is a challenge. And I think it's an eye-opening when people come and start to learn, especially about the occupation. So for me personally, I don't feel like I have to move with my family. I have to leave the Holy Land. It's not the case that I'm been persecuted by Islam. It's so simple. The reason people are leaving, it's because it's occupation. And occupation is not a nice word. And that's why many Christians, unfortunately, are leaving to this day. And so when you talk in Bethlehem about a month, about 10 or 15 families leaving, that's a lot of people. And so that's why we are dwindling by the number. And your presence means a lot when people come on a pilgrimage. That means we're not alone. We know that we are supported by others like you. Prayers are highly accepted, but and we appreciate it. But for your presence to be with us means the world for us. To be at the guest house in St. George's, to be in our parishes on Sundays. Some parishes, like when you came, Bishop DeDe, and we went to Ramallah. I mean,
Right.
you saw how it's hard to travel, how long it's going to take us. We didn't know. They waited for us. If you were late, they will wait. That's how important it is of a visit when you come and be with us.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's exactly my experience. Was the gratitude people showed that we were there and that they're not alone. And to think, those who are listening, our perceptions of what's happening in other countries is really not the reality. Arab, Palestinian, Christian. These are three words that people separate in their minds, and yet this is the truth of generations, and meeting people who for 28 generations are living in the same place, like your family. What are some ways, like on pilgrimage, what can people kind of expect in terms of safety. I think whenever I say that I'm going to go to the Holy Land on pilgrimage, the first question people ask is about safety. And so if you could say something about what people can expect on pilgrimage in terms of safety.
Yeah, you know, it's very, very difficult question for me to answer because I don't know or I cannot predict such things. But my
Mhm.
way always to answer whoever asked me this question is you look for the airlines. If the airlines are flying, that means it's safe. And so imagine all the American airlines are coming. There's 2 flights a day by Delta Airlines. United Airlines has 2
Mhm.
flights. El Al and
Mhm.
others. So you look at the airline. If the airlines are flying, that means it is safe for you to come. If I were you, you
Mhm.
have to trust somebody that is living in the Holy Land. I know not, this time it's me that I'm talking to you, but if there was danger, I would never ever put people in danger. So the leaders, if it's a priest or a bishop or the organizer, will be the first one to know. God forbid something goes wrong, that you cannot come, and will tell you do not come. But we'll do our best to do. There's always plan B, you know. Every time we send out the program or the itinerary, there's always a change because we don't and we cannot predict what's going to be next, you know. But it's
Mhm.
absolutely safe. The only concern for me would be, for example, we visit Jericho, and when you come to Jericho
Mhm.
with me, it's hard to know, are we going to leave Jericho by going no checkpoint at all? Or is there going to be an Israeli checkpoint, which means it could be a 10-minute wait, or it could be an hour or 2 hours? But sometimes when I share this with such interviews, it's going to scare people. Checkpoint. Do I really want to come now? It's absolutely safe. And believe me, we need you. And Bishop DeDe came with a couple more bishops. They saw how much people appreciated their visit, and I can
Mhm.
guarantee how many times they were said, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. It means the world that you came and be solidarity with us when you come
Mhm.
to the Holy Land."
Absolutely. And I can say firsthand, the thing you realize right off is with a checkpoint, it does sound scary. It sounds like something big is going to happen, but they're very aware of outsiders, is how the feeling is. And so being there, um, but going through a checkpoint is not, it's similar for those of us in this area when we go to Canada. You go through a checkpoint, you go through a place where you show your passport, and then you drive on through, and it's very similar in terms of the way it's set up. And then also each day, when we would gather, Iyad would come in and say, okay, today our agenda says this, these are the things we're going to do, because the checkpoints are one piece of it. But what also I witnessed happening was that suddenly a road would be closed, a blockade would be put up by the Israeli government and all. And so then that would change what direction we could go. And it wasn't a matter of safety in terms of something, physical happening to you. It was more, okay, now we need to adjust to a new reality. And one of the things I really appreciated, Iyad, when we were there was your calm presence about it. You'd be like, okay, so we're going to change our plans now, and you're very effective in making sure that people are safe, and that when there is a need for a change, that we're prepared for it. Um, Now going through Ramallah, that for me was one of the highlights of the trip because you had really prepared us for that. That's another thing that I think you do really well on pilgrimage is you explain to people what to expect. You're going to see these things. These are things you might witness. And so we walked through Ramallah, which of course, for those of us who do not live there, the things we hear in the news are very different than the reality. Um, and so walking through Ramallah was very comfortable. And I was really struck by the number of people passing by who would look at us surprised and then smile like, oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
but
Clearly, clearly I can't pass when it comes to walking through
yeah,
Ramallah, being a
yeah,
blonde white woman. But people were so grateful. And then when we got to the church, I was amazed the some of the conversations, people who are aware of things happening in the United States, the connections with people in the United States. It was very gratifying. And one person even said to me, why aren't more people coming? Because we're Christians, we're Episcopalians, and we need to know we're not alone. And that was really a message I heard over and over when we were there. And so I thought it was really well handled. Now, in
Can
terms
I?
of our faith, oh, yeah, please
Yeah, I
go
just
ahead.
want to, just to go back about occupation. Occupation is not a nice word. And so when I talk about checkpoints, you saw it, there's no danger whatsoever. The whole theme
Hmm.
behind it is to make people frustrated, to make more people leave. And that's the idea. Remember that we have occupation and they want to grab more and more land. And so I'm talking about the West Bank in particular. There's been annexation, but very softly done by the far right government that we have today. So when we say, checkpoints is to make life miserable for others, it's hard to tell. When we left, if you remember Jerusalem, I thought it's going to take us more than an hour, 30 minutes to get there. Then we started adding things because we made it and we were so happy that we got early. So that's why it's hard for us. But there's no such thing that there's going to be danger to your life. You felt it yourself when you came. And so occupation, it how can I describe? Especially the shocking news when I start talking to people, Palestinians drive different color license plate.
Yes.
When you go to the West Bank, you cannot drive a white color license plate or a green color license plate to certain areas, especially coming into Jerusalem, which is totally under Israeli control. You cannot find a Palestinian car in Israel proper. When I talk about water issues, when you say water tanks on the rooftop, how people have to pump water whenever there's water in the main pipe, so that people can have drinking water. And I know it's shocking for some people who's going to listen now, and maybe they'll say, "Oh, I'm overreacting." The best thing is when you come and experience it firsthand. Again, I'm not against Israeli Jews. I have beautiful Jewish friends. I have that I call cousins, as you know. But
Right.
occupation, when it comes to discrimination, where you cannot cross borders easily, we cannot have running water, certain roads you're not allowed to be on, fenced areas, checkpoints, or if a village has 3, 4 entrances, they will come and just put a blockade, and make it hard just to go by one. And there's no need for all that, but that's, again, it's part of the occupation. And just to give you a little explanation about the Oslo Agreement when it was signed in 1994, um, imagine it was to freeze the settlements or not to build more settlements in the occupied territory. So when Oslo was signed in 1994 between Rabin and Yasser Arafat, there used to be 400,000 settlers who lived in the West Bank. So today it tripled.
Mm.
Imagine there's over 800,000. So instead of making things calm down by stopping building more settlements, they're grabbing more land, expanding those settlements, and that's why it's not working. And me personally, after Rabin's assassination, 1995, by a radical fundamental Jew, that was the end of the peace process because Oslo was to give up gradually the West Bank, to be self-controlled, to have a Palestinian state next to the state of Israel. And that's where the confusion when divided the West Bank into 3 areas. Area A, which is 21% of the West Bank, and then Area B, and that's 18% of the West Bank, and then 61 of the West Bank is still under Israeli control. And they have the right to expand, to build wherever they want. And so the more settlements you build, it's like pouring oil on fire. It's not going to make things easy or settle things down. It's going to actually make it harder. And unfortunately, it's happening
Hmm.
to this day.
Yeah. No, and we really saw that, especially when we were going to go to Wadi Kel, and they had put up a blockade, and they said, "Oh, you can go around there, and you can go on this other road." Well, I will say, where we were directed, it wasn't even a road; it was a washed out trail. I mean, I think an SUV would have had trouble going along that road, but it was just, closing down something that's a holy place for Christians. It just does make it more difficult. And the other thing is when we were, excuse me, out, we would see and talk with people who had these experiences that 85% of water that spring water is going to is not going to Palestinians who live there, and so the water's being taken away and different things. And so occupation is a difficult word, and it's a real reality. This is about, people want to make it about politics, but it really is about humans and about the human dignity. One of the things I appreciated on pilgrimage with you, we had a Jewish scholar come and talk with us, and so we got to really see the complexity of life there. Our news tends to be very monochromatic, or one side versus the other, or that there's just two entities at work here. But can you say a bit about how, with the walls that were put up, our perception a lot of times here is that the walls divide Palestinians from Jewish communities, but that was not what I witnessed. So can you say more about like the way walls have separated communities?
Absolutely. It all started after Sharon's visit to Al-Aqsa Mosque. He's the one that sparked the second Intifada. You have to understand that Sharon did not believe in the Oslo Agreement. And remember, Oslo was to give more and more land to the Palestinians so that they can be self-controlled, or they have their own Palestinian statehood next to the state of Israel. And so when Sharon visited Al-Aqsa Mosque, he sparked what's called the second Intifada. And that's where lots of suicide bombers started coming out and bombing innocent people, unfortunately. And that's when Israel decided to build the wall. And that's where they misled the world when they said, we want to, and many, especially from the West, they think that Israel built to separate a Jew from an Arab. And the shocking news, it separates Arab from an Arab. And so what they did today, if Israel would put the wall or build a separation wall that brings security to them, and they put it on what's called the Green Line, the separation line from 1948 to 67, it would be 420 kilometers long. Today, it's, if I'm not wrong, it reached over 900 kilometers. So it's not put on the real border. It's to grab as more empty land with no people and be in control under the Israeli control. And that's where Area A, Area B, and Area C comes in, which is a ridiculous way of making peace between two peoples,
Right.
So the wall, it's not temporarily, like some say. There's no such thing. It's there to build, to stay for a long time. And unfortunately, it's divided so many people from their jobs, from their families. And so that built more hatred than bringing peace to put those two people together.
Well, and we saw the wall right there in Bethlehem on one side of it. And imagine, listeners, it is a big cement. It is not a temporary wall. These are very large gray walls. But along the wall, people had put stories talking about the separation of the walls and how it's impacted real families and real humans. And it was very powerful to read these witnesses of what has been happening in the reality of people's lives. Now, I want to shift a little where we're getting closer to time, is I want to talk a bit about the holy sites that on pilgrimage people go to see, the Holy Sepulchre, these places of faith that we read about in Scripture. You mentioned Jericho, where we did spend time. You have a beautiful house there, and so being in Jericho, and then these places that in Scripture we hear about. How, when you take groups, what are some of the things you've noticed with the groups you take, that when they see for the first time these holy places that are talked about in Scripture, like the Church of the Nativity where we went? Can you say a bit about your experience of people seeing that for the first time?
Yeah, what I love about especially Americans, and in particular the one who comes from Texas, Texas, everything is big. And so I love it when I take my people early morning, especially to Wadi Kelt, where we were supposed to go early morning, remember? And there was a blockade, we couldn't go in. And that's one of my favorite sites, to go and celebrate Eucharist. But when we get there and we hike up a little hill, and I show people, to your left is Jerusalem and to your right is Jericho. People, you're talking about 20 miles. I mean, you see the lights of Jerusalem from one side and you see the lights of Jericho on the other. And the reason I say lights, because we leave so early. There's no breakfast. We leave like around 5 in the morning and we drive down, and that's when we celebrate Eucharist. And while we're there, also I show them a town named Taipei, And you visited that, Bishop. We had lunch in Taipei.
Mm-hmm.
Taipei,
Taipei.
it's the
Yeah.
biblical town of Ephraim, and Ephraim is mentioned after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. He went hiding in the wilderness, in the desert area. So our traditions say Taipei, it's Ephraim, and it's only 22 miles from Jerusalem. And then, of course, right
Mm-hmm.
after that would be. So that's what I love when people reaction, when you show them how short of a distance it is when you visit the Holy Land. While we're standing, I show them the mountains of Moab. I mean, it's where Moses showed the promised land,
Mm-hmm.
the Jordan River, so it's a very, very small country. But my favorite place would be staying at St. George's. And the reason we love to stay at St. George's, first of all, it's so close to the old city of Jerusalem. And so you can imagine how
Mm-hmm.
many times we go in and out from the gate that's called
Right.
Damascus Gate. And so you can imagine just walking on the Cardo. Cardo is the street that takes you back to the Roman time. It's the north-south road. And then you stop and go to the Church of the Resurrection, as we call it in Arabic. You call it
Mm-hmm.
Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it's an amazing feeling. To this day, you just walk in, and it's a huge awe, even for me, as many times as I go there, especially going to a special back side of a tomb that today we call Joseph of Arimatheas. And it's
Mm-hmm.
operated by the Assyrians. So imagine this huge church, which is only a small part of what Queen Helena had built in the 4th century. Today is controlled by 6 denominations. We have Armenians, we have Greek Orthodox, we have Catholics, we have Assyrians, we have Coptics. And so Ethiopians, they all live under one roof. And
Mm-hmm.
and to walk in, to show you the beauty of that place, or I should say how powerful that place is. It still gives me goosebumps to think about it. So one of my favorite sites to take people and see their reaction is when we go and visit Saint Joseph of Arimathea's tomb.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine it's Assyrians. They still speak Jesus's language, Aramaic. So when we visit one of their churches controlled by the Assyrians, it's called St. Mark's, and it houses the upper room. And I love it when the monk that is there to welcome us, or the sister, say, "Welcome to the upper room that's down." And so we usually go down to visit a church, a
Mm-hmm.
room that was, of course, 2,000 years ago, was up in the upper city. And so these kind of
Mm-hmm.
things, you're going to feel it and see it. Going to the Church of the Nativity, the birthplace, show how close it is for Ruth coming, meeting Boaz. You talk about the lineage, talk about Jesus being born in a cave, not an inn. Share with them about the word
Uh-huh.
katalima. Doesn't mean a hotel. It's the back room. It's a not a, many think it's just it's a cave. It's something natural caves that we visit that takes you back to Jesus's
Mm-hmm.
time. And so if you love history, you're gonna love my country, because the real history it's here. You go to Jericho and you talk about a tower that was founded by a famous British archaeologist. Her name is Kathleen Kenyon. She dates that tower to 8,000 BC. That's 10,000 years old. So you can imagine how people feel when they see and talk about these kind of things, going to the Sea of Galilee. They think you're going to drive distances, but where Jesus taught the Beatitudes, it's not far from where he fed the 5,000 people. It's not far from Capernaum, where he lived. His ministry began there, and walking on the water and all that. So all these places become alive when we visit and read the gospel. It becomes alive. The gospel will never, ever be the same when people come on a pilgrimage. Going back, especially visiting to a place called Borkin. Imagine a beautiful Orthodox church built over a cistern that dates back to the 1st century, and it's believed where 10 lepers were hiding, or put on isolation, I should say, until our Lord walked that way and he healed them. So imagine, it's one of the 4th oldest churches in the world is in Borkin, and it remembers the healing of the 10 lepers. And my favorite is when the reading takes place back in your churches and I get an email or a text, and Iyad, "Oh, thank you for taking us to this site. It meant the world for me to be at the Beatitudes or to be at Borkin. Now I can visualize it." It's different when we came, and the temptation would be the same. And elsewhere, all these biblical sites. And that we visit.
It's so true. I mean, I was really struck the night we were at the cathedral there in Jerusalem with Bishop Hossam, Archbishop Hossam, and we celebrated. And in the reading, it was talking about a site that was 100 yards away, and to be there and to read the scriptures and to have it come alive, in your midst, was just profound for my faith. And I know the first time I went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, you never quite know. God's going to show up sometime in a pilgrimage. That's just kind of how it works. And I kept thinking, oh, it'll be when I see this or to see that. But when we went to the grotto, the Church of the Nativity, where the cave is, and you start to go down these steps, and the steps are just worn in from all of the pilgrims who have come to this holy site. And to look at those steps and think of Egeria and, Marguerite Perret, or to think of Marjorie Kemp, or some of these people who historically, that I'm walking down the steps where for generations people have come to pay homage to Jesus, who've come to this holy site. And when we were there, it was, of course, Orthodox Christmas, and it was just, I don't even know what I expected, but I found it transformative to be there. We went late at night. One of the things on pilgrimage, Iyad mentioned it, sometimes, you get up early in the morning because there's a good thing to go see, but always your needs are taken care of. But we went at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night and stayed until 2 or 3. But it was profound because there's families, and the Armenians and the Coptics and the Greek Orthodox were all having their holy celebrations. And it was just so moving to be part of other people with other cultures worshiping and praising God. It was really profound. Well, I want to thank you, Iyad. I may call you and bring you back because there's so much to learn from you, from your wisdom of not only the life experience as an Arab Palestinian Christian, and also for having pilgrimages. For those who are listening, the Diocese of Central New York does have a pilgrimage scheduled with Iyad's company, with his family. We'll be going at the end of August, and you're invited. Look on the website for dates and times and all the details, and we just invite you to come with us on pilgrimage, that you might be transformed by visiting these sites, and also that we might learn together the reality of the history, but also the present reality of what's happening in the Holy Land. And so I give thanks for you being with us, Iyad. Thank you to those listening. And now I pass the baton to you, as we do here, to go and talk with people, to invite new understandings, and that we all might know God and praise God and be a blessing to this world. So be well, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks again for joining us on Speaking of Faith, a production of the Episcopal Diocese of Central New York. Make sure to leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Connect with us online at cnyepiscopal.org, or you can join us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at CNY Episcopal. We'll see you next time.